Good evening. Breathe slowly. Let your body release its fatigue. And allow this story to be your companion before sleep. Then tell me where you are listening to this story, in what state, and with what feeling. Write it in the comments column, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so I know you like the stories I act. Let's continue into the story this time. Tonight, we will go to a time long before the modern world was born. To a kingdom that lived side by side with the ocean. A kingdom that grew from water. Sustained by river flows. And guarded by gentle coastal winds. The kingdom was named Sriwijaya. But tonight, we do not recount it as a great kingdom conquering the Indian Ocean. Not as a maritime power connecting the eastern and western worlds. We instead see Sriwijaya from its calmest side. From the side that moves slowly like a river current. Guiding wooden ships walking towards the horizon. Imagine a silent night on the banks of the Musi River. The water moves gently, reflecting the shady moonlight. In the distance, small boats are tied to wooden poles, rocking slowly as if breathing. The sound of night insects forms a distinctive melody, as if nature is playing the same song. Since thousands of years ago, on a small wooden stage, a resident sits while repairing a net. He moves slowly, because night is the time to care for tools. Not a time to be in a hurry. Before Sriwijaya stood, southern Sumatra was a land with small villages. People lived near rivers, relying on water for life, trading, and traveling. They were not in a hurry. The world moved slowly. Time walked like a boat without oars, following the current calmly. Until one day, from among those villages, emerged a group of sailors who saw a wider world. They observed the wind, waves, and the direction of ocean currents. They realized that large rivers flowed into oceans connecting lands. They understood that water was not just a source of life. Water was a path. And from that simple yet profound understanding, Sriwijaya began to grow. Not in one night. Not in one season. But slowly. Like a mangrove tree strengthening its roots little by little. Until it became a pillar of life on the coast. Imagine the first morning when Sriwijaya began to form. Mist covered the river surface. The wind brought a salty scent from the distant sea. Rowers prepared their long boats, checked ropes, fixed sails, and spoke in low tones. The sun appeared slowly behind the trees, changing the sky color from dark blue to soft orange. That light touched the water surface, bringing out a shine like gold flakes. Everything was so calm, so slow, so sleepy. In a wooden house near the river, a young leader sat and observed that view. He was not yet a king, not yet a ruler, not yet a historical figure. At that time, he was just someone who wanted to understand the world. Through the sound of water and wind, he saw large ships from India, coming bringing cloth and spices. He heard stories about distant lands, where sailors circled vast oceans, with the belief that this world was united by water. And he began to understand that Sriwijaya could be a home for anyone, coming from a long journey. When the people decided to build a larger port, they worked together, without haste. Woods were cut, with a regular rhythm. Poles were erected slowly, like someone building a palace from a dream. Mothers brought food. 4 people working. Children sat on the riverbank, watching small fish swim, without understanding that history was being made. There was no thunder of war. There were no harsh clashes. Only work, patience, and togetherness, flowing with the river water. Day by day, a trading center began to form. Small boats came from upstream, bringing rattan, resin, and produce. Large ships came from the ocean, bringing foreign merchants, new stories, and much wider knowledge. And Sriwijaya stood from that flow. From water, from wind, from travel, and from the calmness of its people. Like a seabird, spreading its wings slowly, Sriwijaya began to fly high, in the silence of Sumatra's morning. And tonight, we will follow that long journey, with slow steps, a gentle rhythm, and a story inviting you closer into sleep. Sriwijaya began to grow as a center of life close to water. In its early days, the river was a slowly beating heart, giving energy and direction to those living around it. Every activity, no matter how small, started from the river and returned to the river. Imagine a morning on the banks of the Musi River, long before big cities stood around it. Mist hung low over the water surface, making the world look like an unfinished painting. River water moved slowly and confidently, as if it knew that it would connect distant lands. Fishermen came down from their stilt houses, descending slightly creaking wooden stairs. They carried nets that were still wet, letting their fibers drip water onto the cold river surface. With slow movements, they pushed small boats, and began to paddle to the middle of the stream. Every stroke of theirs felt like one long breath. The boat moved not fast, but followed the body rhythm, already accustomed to working in harmony with water. In the air, smelled the scent of the river, slightly salty, slightly damp, and keeping stories of thousands of years. Small birds passed low, catching insects on the water surface, without producing sound other than gentle wing flaps. Mothers prepared breakfast in the kitchens of their stilt houses. Thin smoke rose into the air and disappeared in the morning sunlight. They cooked calmly, without haste, because for Sriwijaya residents, morning was not a time to run, but a time to start living, with slow wisdom. In the riverside market, merchants began to arrive. Some brought fresh fish. Some brought rattan baskets. Some brought flowers and spices from upstream villages. They arranged merchandise very neatly, receiving buyers with warm smiles, and dialoguing with low voices. There were no shouts, no coercion. Only the sound of water continuing to move became the background of transactions full of calmness. When Sriwijaya began to build its first port, the atmosphere on the river became a little more alive, but alive in a peaceful way. Workers brought large wood, tying it using rattan ropes, and placing it one by one at the bottom of the shallow river to form a simple dock. They worked not in a frenzy, but in a slow rhythm that allowed them to listen to the wind. Occasionally they stopped, wiped sweat, and gazed at the river, to ensure everything went well. In the afternoon, when the sun began to descend, the sky color changed into a mixture of orange and soft gold. That light touched stilt houses, making the wood look warm, like small embers glowing from within. In some corners of the port, large ships from distant lands began to appear on the horizon. Ship captains stood on the bridge, observing the peaceful riverbank, as if they had found a place different from all previous ports. When the ship finally docked, there was no commotion. Sailors came down with tired faces, but full of relief. They touched Sriwijaya soil with unhurried steps, and were greeted by small smiles from local residents, who felt proud to be hosts. In this water land, some of those sailors went straight to the Buddhist house of worship, located not far from the river. The sound of small bells sounded soft, like calling them to rest after a long journey. Inside the temple, monks sat cross-legged. Their robes fell neatly, forming fine folds, moving slowly every time they breathed. The room was calm, only surrounded by the scent of sandalwood and the echo of low repeated prayers, spinning like wind that never gets tired. Sriwijaya, from the beginning, became more than just a port. It became a place of rest, a place of learning, a place to find peace that could not be found in the middle of open sea waves. Monks from India often stayed for months here. They wrote manuscripts, taught languages, explained teachings, and spread peace to anyone who wanted to listen. For them, Sriwijaya was not just a stopover, but a second home. A home full of soft light and water flowing patiently. When night arrived, the port slowly dimmed. Oil lamps were lit. Their light reflected on the river surface, making the water look like black glass, full of small gold sparkles. Fishermen went home, carrying their catch, and walking on wooden boards, connecting boats to houses. Through those lamps, their shadows looked long, moving slowly, like shadows in a dream. And that night, Sriwijaya felt alive, in the most beautiful silence. Sriwijaya grew not only as a trading center, but also as a home for those seeking inner peace and knowledge. In this kingdom, water not only connected distant places, but also connected human hearts with greater wisdom. Imagine a large temple, standing not far from the flow of the Musi River. The building was made of dark brown wood, decorated with fine carvings, depicting the journey of life. Its roof curved gently, as if protecting anyone underneath from all outside world waves. In its front yard, there was a large banyan tree, with hanging roots descending like natural curtains. Its leaves moved very slowly when the wind passed, producing a soft sound, making anyone want to sit under it and close their eyes. Morning was the most peaceful time in this temple. Monks woke up before sunrise. They walked out, following a small stone path leading to the riverbank. Their robes moved slowly, making a soft sound like silk cloth. Touching wet ground. By the river. They sat cross-legged, facing water that was still dark, because it hadn't been touched by sunlight. In front of them, the world felt like stopping for a moment. There was only the sound of breath, and the sound of water currents slowly caressing the land edge. When the sun began to rise, its light little by little touched the river surface and spread like golden ink. Monks opened their eyes, seeing the world light up again, with soft colors and unhurried movements. Inside the temple, there was a large room where students gathered. Some came from nearby villages. Some came from India. Some even came from distant lands in the north, requiring months of travel, crossing the sea. They came to learn Sanskrit, Buddhist philosophy, navigation science, and teachings about life, teaching calmness in every step. Monks did not teach with loud voices. They spoke slowly, conveying every sentence, like water poured into a bowl, without spilling, without haste. Their voices echoed softly in the room, filling the air with calmness, creeping into the hearts of people sitting in front of them. In the corner of the room, there was always a monk, copying ancient manuscripts. He wrote with a small brush, scratching beautiful letters on palm leaf sheets. His movements were very slow, almost like meditation. Sometimes he stopped, staring at the ink, and waited until his mood stabilized again. Only after that did he continue his writing. Outside the temple, heard the sound of birds calling each other softly. That sound became a natural background for anyone studying teachings. Sometimes the wind brought the scent of wildflowers from the field near the forest. That scent entered without permission, but gave additional peace, like a small gift from nature. In the afternoon, students often sat by the river, reading manuscripts accompanied by the sound of water currents. Some wrote small notes. Some just closed their eyes, allowing their minds to float, like leaves drifting carried by the current. Large ships often came bringing strangers who wanted to learn or rest. When they were welcomed by monks, the atmosphere merged without awkwardness. Language differences, cultural differences, everything melted in the same calmness. Some of them brought stories about distant lands, about ice mountains, vast deserts, and forests never touched by humans. But when those stories were spoken, under the light of Sriwijaya afternoon, everything sounded soft and merged with nature's rhythm. At night, small bells in the temple were rung. Their sound was loud but not harsh, forming a fine vibration in the air. Walking up to the river surface, students returned to their simple rooms, lying down with thin mattresses, and letting their minds slowly sink into calmness. Oil lamps were lit throughout the temple. Their yellow light danced slowly on wooden walls, making the room feel warm and safe. That atmosphere became a gentle call to rest. Sriwijaya was not only a trading center, but also a place where tired souls found peace. Here, Knowledge was not only taught. Knowledge was implanted. Through silence. Through water. Through wind. And through patience. On nights like that, when the whole temple was asleep, and the river moved slowly, Sriwijaya seemed to breathe gently, like a world finally finding its own rhythm. Sriwijaya entered a time where the world began to know it. But that glory did not come with fanfare. Not with the sound of war. But with the sound of waves always returning to the beach. Slowly. Calmly. And never in a hurry. In this time, Sriwijaya mastered the ocean not with the power of the sword, but with a deep understanding about wind, currents, and earth rhythm. They observed bird directions, star motion, and sea color changes, to decide when to sail, and when to wait. Imagine a warm morning, at Srivijaya's main port. Large jackfruit wood ships, lined up neatly along the dock. Their sails were folded. Ropes hung like plant tendrils. And ship hulls were polished by sailors' hands, who had spent years under the sun. The sounds heard were only soft knocks of carpenters, water swinging under boats, and murmurs of low conversations from merchants. Everything went without haste, as if the whole world followed the same tempo. On the dock side, an old captain was sitting, while observing the sky. His face was filled with fine lines, but his eyes were clear like the sea surface. In the morning, he observed clouds, calculated wind direction, and felt the air, to know if that day was good for sailing. Not far from there, sailors were preparing goods. There were fragrant pepper sacks, wooden barrels containing resin, baskets containing glass beads, and woven fabrics from the interior of Sumatra, whose colors were soft, like the color of leaves when the first rainy season came. They moved those goods carefully. There were no command shouts, only hand signals, small smiles, and simultaneous footsteps. When the ship was finally ready, sailors boarded the ship. With slow movements, they tied ropes, lifted anchors, and opened large sails, catching the morning wind, like a chest expanding, in a long breath. Slowly, the ship moved away from the dock. Water split smoothly under its hull. The sound heard was the sound of small waves, seemingly whispering something to the captain. From afar, Srivijaya's ships looked like seabirds, flying with wings wide open, not rushing, not challenging the storm, only following the current, taking them to distant lands. Among those lands were India, China, Cambodia, and many other islands, scattered along the sea trade route, now becoming part of Srivijaya's breath. When Srivijaya's ships arrived at foreign ports, they were welcomed with respect. People from other lands saw Srivijaya sailors as peace-bearers, not conquerors. They came with simple goods, but of quality, with friendly smiles, and with soft language, flowing like a river. In distant markets, Chinese people often stared at Soft fabrics from Sumatra. They touched the fibers, saw the colors, and tried to imagine where they came from. Sometimes they asked Sriwijaya sailors, "How is your land?" And Sriwijaya sailors would answer, with a soft voice, "The water is calm, the wind is friendly, and the people live peacefully." In India, monks who once stopped in Sriwijaya often told their experiences about calm temples, patient teachers, and ports always welcoming, with sincere hospitality. "If you want to learn with the heart," they said, "go to Sriwijaya." And so many students finally sailed the sea, just to find peace in that center of knowledge. But Srivijaya's glory was not only seen in foreign lands. Inside the country, people lived peacefully, because the ocean brought blessings. Every coastal village got new goods, new knowledge, and new stories. Every time a ship returned, children often ran to the dock edge to see ships coming. Their eyes sparkled when seeing large sails slowly approaching. Sailors greeted them with small laughter, giving them unique shells, or showing maps full of sea route scratches. When the day turned into afternoon, the port became a warm place. Sunlight fell onto ship hulls and made them shine softly. Water reflected the sky, starting to change color from light blue to orange, and then golden red. Fishermen went home with their small boats. Most spoke softly, not wanting to disturb the peaceful atmosphere created by nature. Sea wind brought a salty scent, blending with the scent of wet wood, and warm food from stilt houses. Elsewhere, monks lit oil lamps in the temple. Their light looked like small stars, growing on earth. And at such times, Sriwijaya felt like a giant resting. Big, strong, but very peaceful. Its glory did not thunder. Its glory flowed like waves that keep coming, without loud noise. Sriwijaya was at its peak, in the most beautiful silence. In its golden age, Sriwijaya was not just a great kingdom, but a world intersection. But that intersection was not noisy, not full of shouts, not filled with hustle and bustle, like modern markets today. Instead, Sriwijaya became a place where various nations met, in a gentle atmosphere, like the meeting of wind and water. Imagine a day where Sriwijaya port was filled with ships from various corners. There were ships from India, with brownish-red sails, ships from China, with large and sturdy hulls, and ships from Arab lands, bringing the scent of agarwood and fragrant spices. But although many ships came, the port still felt calm. Merchants spoke with low and polite voices. Wind brought scents of wet wood, black pepper, and small kitchen smoke, coming from stilt houses by the river. In the port market, people from various nations gathered under woven umbrellas, protecting them from the sun. They sat cross-legged, showing goods one by one, with slow movements. as if wanting to give time, so everyone could feel their intent and value. A Chinese merchant spread soft silk cloth, sky blue color. He touched its surface with fingertips, then smiled softly. When a Sriwijaya merchant looked at it with sparkling eyes. Across the market, a merchant from India arranged glass beads, shining when hit by sunlight. He told a story, how the beads were made, about fire, about patience, and about small art, requiring steady hands and a calm heart. Sriwijaya merchants brought rattan, resin, camphor, and woven fabrics from the interior of Sumatra. They spoke with simple gestures and friendly expressions, making anyone feel accepted. Outside the market, small paths were filled by children, observing the newcomers. They noticed different clothes, different ways of speaking, and unique goods they had never seen before. But they remained silent, respecting the peace guarded by their parents. In a yard near the port, travelers often stopped to rest. Some sat while writing in small notebooks, recording stories of their journey. Some others enjoyed warm drinks from local merchants, inhaling the aroma, hugging themselves with the softness of Sumatra land. Sriwijaya became a kind of bridge, connecting cultures from all corners. But that bridge never wavered, because it was built by values, simple but strong: hospitality, patience, and calmness. Arab sailors often sat with monks, talking about stars and the sea. They told each other stories about long journeys, about big storms, and about silent nights in the middle of the ocean.